My name is Daryl Oldham. I am a product manager here at Red Vector. We want to thank you for joining us for this webinar on training today's engineers to be tomorrow's leaders. Just a couple housekeeping things up front. Please note this webinar will not be eligible for continuing education credits. Also, just so you know, for the webinar basics today, we will be recording so that we can send this out as a recording to everybody who registered. If you're having any technical difficulties with the WebEx today, please open up the chat window to the right and let us know if you're having any problems hearing us or any screen issues, and we'll go ahead and respond to you. And finally, we'll be having Q&A throughout the session. If you just want to use the QA panel to the right, give us your questions, and if we're in a good place, we'll go ahead and pull Anthony aside and have him answer that question for you. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to introduce Anthony Fasano. He's a professional engineer and one of our leading content providers for Red Vector. The courses he provides us are some of the most utilized and highest rated, and we're excited to have him on this call with us today. So with that, Anthony, do you want to go ahead and take us away?
Okay, great. Thanks, Daryl. Everyone should be able to see my slides here. If there's a problem with this audio or the slides, just put it in through the chat and Daryl will alert me and we'll make the changes we need to make. All right, so I'm excited to be here with you today. Again, my name is Anthony Fasano. I'm founder of a website and company called the Engineering Career Coach, which I'm going to tell you the story behind today. But really what I want to do today is help you to grow in your career. And I realize that we may have individuals on the call here that are professionals in the AEC industry that want to grow. We may have those of you that are in HR or training and you need to put together programs to grow tomorrow's leaders. Or you may be a manager, a leader, an executive, and you're looking to motivate the next generation. So I promise all of those scenarios you'll be able to take value out of this presentation today. And I'm going to start just quickly by telling you a little bit about my background so you understand where I'm coming at this from.
Anthony?
Yes?
If you would like, could you share your screen again? It is not coming through for us.
Okay. Here.
Excellent, thank you.
Is that coming through? Okay. And just so you know, Daryl, I have the Q&A and chat up on my screen as well, so you only need to stop me if I don't stop for a question. So thank you. All right, so while I do this introduction of myself, I thought it would be helpful for me a little bit is if I could get a little feedback from the audience. If you have your chat box there, if you could do me a favor, if you're an individual professional in the AEC industry looking to use the information here to succeed and grow, just type the letter P to indicate that. If you happen to be a manager or a leader and you're interested in using this to motivate your group, your team, then just type in L. And if you happen to be in training, HR, any field that might be putting together programs, if you could type T, that would be helpful for me just to get a little bit of the landscape. And again, if you have questions or answers, put them in, and then along the way questions, and we'll be able to help you. All right, so once again, my name is Anthony Fasano. The session is entitled Training Today's Engineers to Be Tomorrow's Leaders. And a little background on myself. So I went to school for civil engineering, and I practiced as a civil engineer for about 12 or 13 years. And when I got into the workplace, I got depressed in the beginning because it was such a big industry, the AE industry, and I didn't really know which direction to go. And I got very frustrated. And so what I decided to do was to talk to successful, at that time, civil engineers, because I was a civil engineer, and see how they became successful. And what I noticed was a pattern. And the pattern was that successful engineers had a combination of the technical background, right, as well as the non-technical skills, the interpersonal skills, the networking skills, the leadership abilities. And so right away I decided that I'm going to develop those skills myself. And when I did, my career absolutely took off. I went through several promotions. I became an associate at the youngest person in my company to do it, and it was unbelievable. But then what happened was I started to notice that a lot of engineering professionals or AE professionals struggled with developing these skill sets, and I wanted to help them. So I decided to go to coaching school at night and speaking school at night, and I convinced my engineering company to let me implement a full coaching program. And it went so well, and we started seeing success, that I decided to write my book, Engineer Your Own Success, go out on my own and start the Engineering Career Coach. And since then, I've traveled to over 30 states in the U.S., all over the country, helping technical professionals grow these skills that we're going to talk a little bit about today. So I want you to understand my background and that I was kind of in the trenches, so I know what these professionals are going through and what they're thinking, and that's how I've tried to create the content that I'm going to give to you today. Now, to get us kicked off here, I'm going to start off with a quote. People often say that motivating doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. So it's not just about going in front of a group of people and motivating them, motivating your staff, right? And that's just going to last forever. There's things that you have to do on a consistent basis to set them up for success on a regular basis. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So specifically, the points that I'm going to cover today include, we'll talk about goal setting and how important it is to do that with your team members and your staff. I'll get into credentials and how they can help you increase your expertise and credibility as a firm overall. Talk about mentoring and how underutilized mentoring is in the industry. We'll get into effective communication skills, of course, including public speaking, networking and building relationships, one of the biggest avenues to opportunity. We'll get into organization and productivity, and then, of course, I'll end off with leadership and how to inspire the next generation. All right, so let's start off with setting goals, right, with your staff or your team. This is something that is absolutely underutilized, and I don't think it's done really in the best way. So what I recommend doing is that your supervisors should be setting goals with your staff, and they should be asking the staff what their own goals are, right, and then helping them to set goals. And they should also be asking the staff why they have these goals, right? I mean, if you ask one of your, let's say, use an engineering example, you ask a young engineer, what's your goal? And the engineer says, well, I want to be a partner in this firm. Well, my next question is why? Why do you want to do that? Do you want to just make a lot of money, or do you want to work on great projects? Do you want to be a part of the community, right? So I think kind of connecting with your staff on what they want to do and why they want to do it is an important aspect of goal setting, and I recommend that it be rolled into maybe their annual review, per se. I think the annual reviews just kind of sometimes you just fill out a piece of paper and it doesn't really help, right? So make them engaging goals and use the goals to promote engagement. So if you do an annual review and you set goals with a staff member, check in with them in 6 months. How are your goals doing? How are we measuring those goals? How do we know if you've made any progress? Because when someone has goals that they're working towards, they stay motivated and inspired. When they don't, a lot of times they don't, because they don't have an endpoint. You should also consider setting reasonable goals and reasonable deadlines. All right, I mean, goals are great, but if you're going to tell someone that you need to become a project manager in 3 months after starting, you know, it's going to burn people out. It's going to have the reverse effect, and people are going to get demotivated because it's too big of a mountain to climb too quickly. So think about setting very reasonable goals with your staff and having reasonable ways to measure them. And follow up on these. I remember being a very motivated engineer, filling out my review sheet with goals, and then no one ever followed up with me. So I kind of started thinking like, well, what's the point of me doing this if no one here even cares? So don't just give people a goal sheet to give them a goal sheet. Give them a goal sheet because you want them to be dialed into what they're working on, and you want to follow up and keep them engaged on it. All right, if anyone has any questions, thoughts on goal setting, please feel free to share them or things that you might do. I know for me what I've been focused on very lately, and I've coached hundreds of engineers one-on-one, what I've had some success with lately is 90-day goal setting. So work with an engineer on setting goals for the next 90 days, identify any challenges around those goals, and then figure out how we're going to measure the goals between now and 90 days and then track it. All right, next I want to get into credentialing. It's very important from what I've learned from engineers that you support your staff getting credentialed. I mean, it's important for a lot of reasons. One of the big reasons that's important is because it definitely sets your company apart from others, right? If you start to get people certified in a certain field that's up and coming and there's a lot of work in that field, your company is going to be the leader. If you have a certain amount, in some states and regions, if you have a certain number of people licensed, sometimes you get a better ranking with your company. Some industries do that. I know in New Jersey, the number of PE licenses give your company a ranking. All right, so it's very, very important for the overall reputation of the firm. I recommend that you support and promote major licenses. I mean, these are things that people really hang their hat on. They really see as it tells people a lot about you and your firm. In fact, I remember this still to this day. When I was younger and I got my PE license, the CEO of our company took me and about 4 or 5 other engineers who got their PE license out to lunch one day. This was a 300-person firm, and I got to spend an hour and a half with the CEO, and he was talking to us, he was engaged with us, and I never forgot that. I mean, that made me want to work harder for that firm and harder for him, because he supported licensure and he appreciated it, and he would do things by like thanking us and taking all the new PEs out to lunch. So support and promote these major licenses. You can also tie the credentialing into the goals, right? We just talked about setting goals with your team and with your staff. So if you're going to set goals with your team, tie the credentials in. And one of their goals could be to get a PE license or get the AIA license, right, your RA license. That will really hook them into it, because then it's a goal that they're looking at and that they've committed to company-wide. And that says a lot. And then lastly, challenge them to obtain these credentials. Don't just assume that everyone's going to get a PE license or become a registered architect, right? Challenge, challenge, challenge. Because sometimes you're going to have clients asking for credentials. And are you challenging your staff to get them? I remember for me, I got a phone call from the CEO of our company when I was a young engineer, said, we need more people to get the LEED accreditation, and I want you to be one of those people. So what did I do? I hung up the phone, literally. I went online, I found out when the test was, I registered for the test, I got a book, I took a review course, I passed the test within like 30 days or less from that phone call. There was 5 or 6 other people, like 1 or 2 people might have passed close to around when I did, 2 or 3 took longer, and two just like never got it, never did it. And so to me, this separates the leaders. Like if you challenge someone to obtain a credential and they go out there and get it, that tells you something about people, and it also motivates people to do it when it's coming from someone that they respect. All right, the next strategy that I recommend in motivating the next generation is to provide avenues for mentoring. I consider a mentor someone that guides an individual toward his or her goals, right? Think about it. We talked about goal setting as the first step. Well, if you have goals, you need help to get to those goals. And that's where you can come in as the company, as the training staff, in providing an avenue for that mentoring. Maybe you want to create a program within your company. A company I worked for had a very robust mentoring program where they would match people interested with people that wanted to mentor. Very, very powerful. And it was only about 1 meeting a month. We usually met in person, even if it required driving to another office, because the company saw a lot of value in it. Organizations like professional associations like ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers, for example, have robust mentoring programs where they can connect two members. You can promote your staff to take advantage of those programs if you don't have your own program. You can also make informal mentoring connections within your company, right? Offer it out there. Anyone like mentoring, let us know, and we can try to find a senior professional that would mentor you. It doesn't have to be a whole program. And then there's other resources out there. I know I have a Red Vector course in their AEC Success Series that I did on how to become a mentor or how to find a mentor. So there's a lot of resources online that can help you to find the right mentor or become a mentor yourself, because in my opinion, that's also very helpful. If you have the leaders in your company doing mentoring, they're practicing their leadership skills. It's kind of like leadership training in disguise, which is what I like to call it, because they're mentoring, they're teaching, and that's what ultimately what good leaders do. All right, so this next one is something that is obvious, right? You want to help employees build effective communication skills, but I want to dig into this a little bit because there are a lot of layers to communication. So I want to dig a little bit into some of the different things that I want you to think about. So one of the things to think about is that there's so many different forms of communication. So you need to educate your staff on, what the best forms of communication are, or teach them that they need to figure that out. If they're emailing clients that prefer to be called or text, or vice versa, it could have could cause major issues. We're talking about tight deadline projects here. So part of what you need to teach project managers now is that, picking the right form of communication and being efficient with it is a big part of your job. And on your end, from the company end, the company should be streamlining their communication tools, not adding stuff, right? We're in this world where we have social media, texting, messaging, emails, regular mail. Think about how confusing this could get with an AE professional that's trying to run a project and communicate. Right? So if you can streamline the forms of communication, the avenues available, it's only going to help you. For example, I know a lot of companies now use a messaging software as opposed to email to cut down the inter-office emails. That's just one example. If anyone else has anything that you've done on your end, please share it. We'd love to hear it. All right, now this is another obvious one, right? Honesty is the best policy. You should promote honesty even in the face of demanding clients. And I'm not out here suggesting that AE professionals lie on a regular basis or they're dishonest, but what I will say is that when you're a younger professional, you're standing on a project site and there's contractors and laborers and people surrounding you and owners that have millions of dollars in the balance and they're asking you questions and they're putting pressure on you, it's not an easy situation to deal with. In fact, I recently did a podcast interview with a gentleman who was in construction. He said that relationship and that some of those conversations he had were the toughest things that he had to deal with in his career, right? So you want to promote this idea of being open and honest. And so what I mean by that is the best way for me to explain it is to give you an example. When I was an engineer and I became a project manager, I got my first project to manage. My company said, Anthony, here you go. You take the project, you manage it, you manage the client, all the correspondence, everything. I was thrilled. I couldn't wait. I wanted to do, of course, a great job. So the client calls me one day and says, Anthony, we need this plan by tomorrow. And I'm thinking to myself, there is no way we're getting this done by tomorrow. It just wasn't feasible. It's like a 2-3 day job. But what did I say in the moment? I said, absolutely, no problem. And you know what? He was thrilled on the phone, but he wasn't thrilled the next day when I didn't have the plan ready. It was a major problem. He was mad. There was an argument. My boss got involved. I looked bad. My boss looked bad. My company looked bad. But I learned something very valuable in that situation is that even though sometimes it's going to hurt or it might have a short-term negative result, long-term honesty is absolutely the best policy for yourself, for your firm, for the reputation of both. And what I would do from that point forward is when I was in that situation, I would tell the client, I would say, listen, My main goal is to help you to be successful. But I got to be honest with you. We cannot get the plan done to a good quality that's going to help you in 24 hours. Typically, something like this takes 2 to 3 days. Now, when I hang up the phone with you, I'm going to get everybody I have here working on it. Maybe we can get it done quicker, but typically this is a 2 to 3 day job. I just need you to be aware of that. And you might get some kickback in the moment, but ultimately, long term, everybody's going to win. And ultimately, for me, I ended up turning that around and creating a great relationship with that client long term because I learned my lesson. Here's a shocker. Listening is communicating. I think when we talk about communication, we think about talking, we think about speaking, and we forget that listening is a large part of it. And here's what I've learned about AE professionals. Like I said, I've coached a lot of AE professionals, a lot of technical professionals, and one of the first things I do is I will interview. A lot of times I'll be coaching executives and managers, and I'll interview their staff. And I often ask the staff, like, what are some things about your manager that you'd like to be different? And the overwhelming answer is that I want him or her to listen to me. They're always cutting me off. They don't let me finish my sentences. They don't listen to everything I'm trying to get out. Over and over. So I've come up with a theory about this, and I think what happens is that as technical professionals in this industry, we're constantly trying to solve problems, right? And we do it in limited time. So when I'm having a conversation with you and you're telling me about a problem, my brain is already starting to solve it, and I'm already spitting out answers to you. I'm not even going to let you finish. I'm constantly cutting you off. So what I say to managers when I'm working with them is that you need to listen. And one of the strategies you can do to do that is listen for the silence. It's a great strategy. I learned it in coaching, but it's very difficult to implement. So if I'm having a conversation with you, if I want to listen for silence, I'm going to wait until I hear 1 second of silence. So in other words, you need to stop talking and I need to hear silence for 1 second, and then I can start talking. You will find this nearly impossible to do the first few times you do it, but over time as you work at it, okay, it's going to become normal for you, and the quality of your conversations will increase drastically. The other thing you can teach your managers and your staff to do is to acknowledge people. And acknowledging people is another tool I picked up in coaching school, which is simply restating some of what they've said to you back to them. So if a client says, Anthony, this is a really important project, we need to hit the deadline for this, I might say, listen, John, we know that this is a really important project for you, and that's why we have our best engineers working on it today, right? That reinforces to someone that you're listening to them, even if it's subconsciously, and again, it increases the engagement and the quality of your conversations. This is an underrated part of communication, listening, but it's just as important as the talking part of it. Your managers need to listen to your staff. All right, next let's get into responsiveness. What I like about responsiveness, in my opinion, is it's an area where you can gain a lot of credibility and a lot of great reviews with your clients. I mean, think about it. If you ask someone a question or ask for information and someone takes a week to get back to you, then how are you going to feel about that? Maybe not so great. If they take an hour to get back to you, you might feel like, wow, this person cares, they're interested, I want to work with this person, right? So responsiveness in today's world is it's got a lot of value. It holds a lot of water. People want answers immediately today. They want to know that you hear them. So this is what I recommend. I always recommend to people that you be responsive as possible whether or not you have the answer. So what I mean by that is if I go to a meeting and someone says, we need to know if we change this on the project, what the impact's going to be. And I don't know in the moment. I might say, listen, I got it. I'll get back to you right away. It's going to take me an hour, but I'm going to go back, I'm going to find out, and I'm going to get it right away. Right? You don't want to guess. You don't want to just pawn them off. Here's another example, a really good example. If I get a voicemail from a client, and the client says, Anthony, remember that project that we worked on a year ago? We're going to revive it again. We need you to dig out the plans and specs. Now, I could do one of two things. I can either say, all right, it'll take me a few days, I'll dig this stuff out, I'll call them back. Or I can call them back immediately, say, listen, got your message, it'll take me a day or two to dig out the information. Once I have it, I'll call you, come in, we'll go over it. I would always opt for the latter, and because of it, I had great relationships, right? Because people want to be heard. They just want to know that you heard them. They don't care if you don't have the information in the moment necessarily, right? So teach your staff to be responsive, but it doesn't mean that they got to kill themselves in having answers all the time, you know, as soon as the question's asked. All right, now we're getting into what is my favorite topic, which is public speaking. In my opinion, public speaking is the absolute ultimate differentiator when it comes to your career, because most people in our industry can't speak well publicly. So if you can, if your team can, if your staff can, you will be better by everyone else by leaps and bounds, right? I'm always looking for those things that if you do them, they give you a big advance. And public speaking is one of them. And some of the reasons is because, number one, it facilitates project approvals, right? It can help your staff bring in new business for the firm. It builds leadership skills, being up in front of people. And that, of course, can turn into more revenue for the firm, promotions and raises for the individuals, which is going to keep them motivated. And the best thing of all, it builds their confidence. You want confident people on your team. And if they get up in front of the room, they become experts, and they build their credibility, they're going to build confidence. All right, so the question is, how do you help them become better public speakers? So we know that there's a huge return on this. It can impact your projects, your client relations. Promote the development of communication skills, especially public speaking. I would recommend an in-house public speaking group. You probably heard of Toastmasters, which is an international nonprofit that helps people become better speakers. Well, you can have an in-house Toastmasters, which some of you may have. You can have your own, like, once a month brown bag lunches given by one employee a month that has to volunteer for it. You can do something where you have, let's say, 2 brown bag lunches a month. One is going to be an industry topic, and one is going to be a personal hobby. So you might ask, you might identify 10 people in your office over the course of the year. They're going to give a 10-minute talk on what their hobbies are, right? It's more comfortable for someone in the beginning to talk about themselves because it's a comfortable topic, and what it does is it also opens them up to other people in the office, and it builds relationships and builds a good culture. So there's a lot of things that you can do to help build effective communication skills and just continue to promote interaction in your office. And then lastly, what I would also do is promote client interaction as early on as possible. I know it's a little bit risky sometimes, but when you put someone out there, you give them a couple of tools, you're going to be surprised at what they can do. And the earlier they get out there talking to clients, the more that they're going to feel comfortable doing that. Again, if you have any questions at any time, you can put them in. If you'd like to put into the chat things that you've done that you've used successfully, we'd love for you to share them with us. Okay. All right, we're going to move on now. And we're going to get into networking. Networking is one of those things that a lot of technical professionals struggle with quite a bit for obvious reasons. It requires a lot of interaction, sometimes cold calling or attending events and going up to people that they're not comfortable with, right? So when I say networking skills, I'm talking about building relationships primarily, which I believe is the key to success for any firm and any individual in their career. All of the opportunities that you see in your career in life usually come from relationships, but they only come from strong relationships, usually people that you know fairly well, right? So I always recommend that people get to know people on a real personal level, and they take the time to build really, really powerful relationships. All right, so again, it's easy to say that. I'm sure you've heard of this and you've thought about the benefits of this, right? But how do you, as a company, help your staff become better at networking and better at building relationships. One of the things I recommend you do is put on lunch seminars or events in your office and invite clients and invite other people. So create your own networking events and get them to network with the people that you want them to network with, other employees and clients. Always discuss the impacts that networking can have to their goals, right? Let's tie it back to the goals again. I mean, we set those goals for a reason. Maybe one of their goals is to attend 3 events this year, or 1 event a month, or 1 every other month, whatever it may be. That'll get them out there a little bit, get them exposed to people, and continue to promote event attendance. Maybe they start by attending events with a supervisor until they're more comfortable, and then they go alone. One of the things that I used to do to help me both with my networking and communication skills is I would volunteer to go to evening meetings, like planning board meetings, design meetings, and I wouldn't even get paid for it because I didn't have budget, but I would go, I would watch my boss communicate, I would network with the client and other people in the room, other consultants. There was a major point of growth for me in my career, and that's something you can make available. You could say to your staff, like, listen, we can't afford to have you, to pay you extra time to go to a night meeting, but you potentially get a lot out of it in your career. If you wanted to, we'll allow you to go. And you'd be surprised how many people go, and you might not even think of doing that, but people want to do that. Okay, we got a couple points left here, and the next one is helping your employees to be organized and productive. And a lot of times this goes back to billability, and being billable in our industry is basically like the end-all goal, right? Everyone's always looking for people that are highly billable. So how do you help people stay organized, productive, and billable? Again, it's a big part of it is the software and the hardware. You know, make sure that they've got the best software and hardware that they can have to keep them productive, and the communication tools, they shouldn't have to worry about that. They should just have to worry about their work, right? So that's one side of it. The other side is you can think about the atmosphere or the schedule that you're giving them. So do you have too many meetings built into your days? Is there redundancy anywhere else? Are they doing certain things maybe they shouldn't be doing, like billing or tasks that could be given to someone else? So think about the tasks that they're doing, when they're doing them, how they're doing them, and the tools that they're using to do them. Those are some of the factors that you can influence and you can streamline and make them more productive. All right, my final point, which I have a few slides on here, is leadership. Now, this is one of those things where, you know, you could talk about this forever because there's conferences and books and seminars on leadership, right? In my opinion, everyone is a leader. It's a question of how much they want to develop those leadership abilities, right? Whether it's someone's an engineer, an architect, a parent, a teacher, you're leading someone or something. What I think you need to do is make your staff and team understand that leadership doesn't mean that you're president of a company, doesn't mean that you have to have 10 people working underneath you, right? Everyone can be a leader in their own way and develop those leadership abilities. You need to preach that because sometimes people get down or dejected because they're not managing someone. Oh, you know, I'm 35 and I'm not really managing anyone, right? So don't let them think that that defines a leader. Positivity. You can't necessarily teach a positive attitude and positive energy, right? But you can have a culture in your company that's a positive outlook. You can hire people that are positive and that are motivating as opposed to negative. Because that I've seen in a workplace, someone who's negative and has a bad attitude, I've seen that spread through the office like a disease. And it's very, very, very contagious in a very, very bad way. All right, so that's something you can think about in your hiring processes. Opportunity, okay? Good leaders see opportunity in everything that they do. You have to encourage your staff to look for opportunities. When I went to coaching school, they gave us 2 questions that we could use to stay opportunistic in our thinking. One of them was whenever you get into a situation that appears to be negative or bad in any way, you ask yourself, first question, where's the opportunity in this situation? And what that does is it forces you to be opportunistic. Believe it or not, you'll usually find something. But if it doesn't work out, you can't find an opportunity, you ask the second question, which is where can I learn and grow from this situation? And again, you'll usually find something. So teaching your staff to be opportunistic and everything is going to help them to be great leaders. Your leaders need to understand their role, okay? In my opinion, my role as a leader, right, as an engineering leader, was always to make sure that the team, that I gave the team everything they needed to succeed, because if they succeeded, right, then we succeeded, all right? So I think that you have to get that, they have to know what their role is. If they don't, it's, again, demotivating. And I'll give you two stories here to show you this. When I was an engineer, I had two managers. First manager I would go to and say, hey, John, I'm done with my plans, my specs, they're ready for review. And John would say, put them on the shelf, I'm busy, I'll get back to them later. What did that do to me? It deflated me. I just worked on this for so hard, and now you're going to tell me to put them on the shelf, and that's it, and I got to wait, right? Well, John didn't know that his job was to keep me going, keep me motivated, keep the projects moving. Then I had another manager, and I would say, hey, Andy, I did these plans, I did these specs, they're ready to go. And you know what Andy would do? He would say, Anthony, come in right now. Sit down at the table. Let's go through everything, and let's keep you moving. He understood his role. And guess which one I wanted to work for? Of course, Andy. Right? So think about the way you're approaching people and your role as a leader. The picture you see on the screen here is from my brother's office. My brother is a scientist. He runs a big laboratory, and I went up to visit him for the first time in his lab. And I said, you know, where's Dr. Fasano's office? And they pointed me in the right direction. And I went over to his office, and I saw this sign that he had taped on the door, bother me. And at first I'm thinking to myself, what an idiot. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what, this is actually brilliant. Like, basically what he's saying is he's sending a message to everyone in the lab that no matter how busy he is or how important, quote unquote, important he is, that he's available to them. And he wants them to come in and ask questions and seek help and seek guidance. And this is the kind of culture that you need to spread to your entire company. Bother me. From the CEO down, bother me, bother me, bother me, because you're the most important thing and I need to keep you rolling along. All right, just a couple points here, and I'm going to close up with a little short story. Delegation. This is probably the biggest challenge for technical professionals that are trying to become powerful leaders. They're hard at letting go of the detailed work, which is understandable. But they have to do that. And what you can do is help your leaders delegate better. And the best way to do that is teach them to delegate small tasks in the beginning, give clear directions, and follow up with their team. Bite-sized. Don't expect them to say, here, you take this project and run with it. So you take this component of the project and get it done. And I'll check in with you. So encouraging your leaders to delegate and giving them some training around that could be very, very helpful. All right, I know this is something that you probably heard in Little League, right? There's no I in team, but it's true. Strong leaders think team first. They don't view themselves as bigger or better than the team, right? They take on the responsibility for failures and they pass the praise along to their team. And you need leaders in your firm that do that. That's going to train the next generation of leaders. Not building this culture of, I got to do what's best for me, but building a culture of, we've got to succeed together. That's how we're going to win. I remember once I watched the Yankee game, and Derek Jeter hit the game-winning home run. It was a walk-off home run, and the reporter ran up to him as he crossed home plate and said, Derek, tell us about that. Tell us about the pitch. Tell us about how you turned on it. And you know what he said? He said, I'll tell you right now, if it wasn't for our pitchers and our fielders, we would not even be where I wouldn't have not even been in the position to succeed and hit that home run. That's why he was the captain, because he wasn't talking about himself. He immediately was talking about the team. He knew it was a team effort. And that's something that we're losing in today's culture, and we need to get that back. All right, so a couple of final tips here, and then I'll give you a summary, and I'll close what I think is a powerful story to reinforce the points we learned today, is remember, challenge your staff. Bring them to meetings with you. Give them big responsibilities. Tie everything into their goals. Always push them to look for opportunities. That's how they're going to succeed, and that's how you're going to succeed. All right, quick summary. We talked about goal setting. Leverage their reviews. Don't just use the reviews as another time to fill out a form and move on. Make them think deeply about their goals, set their goals, and stay engaged on those goals throughout the year. Think about credentials. Support credentials and tie them into their goals. They're going to increase your expertise and credibility as a firm. Provide avenues for mentoring, whether it's in your own company or with other associations. Think about effective communication skills and how you can promote them and create avenues for them. Help your staff to build powerful relationships, because that's only going to help your company achieve more opportunities. Make it easy for your staff to be productive and billable. And urge your leaders to see opportunities and to lead by example and follow those opportunities. All of these points I have courses on in the Red Vector AEC Success Series that you can run your staff through. I'm going to give you my information in a minute if you want to contact me with more questions, but what I want to do right now is end off with a story that I read in a book once, and I share it in all of my talks because it talks a lot about opportunity, and the story goes as follows. Once upon a time, there were two shoe salesmen. They worked for two different companies. Both of their companies approached them and said, we're going to send you to this island, it was a tropical island somewhere, to investigate the possibility of a new market. The first shoe salesman hated the idea. He didn't want to go. He said, it's too far away. The second shoe salesman was excited about the possibility of expansion. So both of them got sent to this faraway tropical island. They both did their analysis, and they both sent back an email to their companies. The first shoe salesman who didn't want to go on the trip, he said in his email, this trip has been an absolute waste of time. All right, waste of time. There are no opportunities here at all because nobody here even wears shoes. Now, the second shoe salesman who was excited about the trip, he wrote back in his email and he said, this has been an amazing trip. The opportunities here are absolutely limitless because nobody here even wears shoes, right? So think about it. If your leaders and your team members are thinking like that second shoe salesman, you're going to be super successful. But if they're thinking like the first one, then not so much. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation today. I hope you'll consider checking out some of my AEC Success